When I was 12 years old, my mom had just started trusting me enough to leave me home alone. So this had to be when I was 12. We live in a peaceful and ordinarily safe little town. Quiet streets, spacious yards, friendly neighbors, and a charming little village with a bunch of shops and restaurants. It really is not a place where you need to look over your shoulder at night if you're walking alone or anything like that. It just feels safe, which is part of the reason my parents trusted me home alone at such a young age. I still live with my parents today in the same house. The night in question, it was a weekend. My parents were leaving me home alone for the night. When we were really little, my grandparents would watch my older sister and I, but since my sister wasn't home for whatever reason, and since I was kind of old enough to be left alone at that age, my parents decided to just trust me by myself. My parents had us young, so they've always been a bit more active in the sense that they'd often travel or go out on the weekends with their friends. They left me some money for pizza for dinner. It was the ideal night for a 12 or 13-year-old. House to myself, video games all night, and pizza for dinner. I used to be obsessed with James Bond video games when I was a kid, so I was playing some game called Nightfire for like my third playthrough on my PS2. After I finished the game again, I decided to order the pizza. There was a pizza place right by our house called Johnny's. It's been closed for years now, but it was one of my family's go-to pizzerias. I ordered a regular pie. At the age of 12, I could easily eat 3 slices by myself. My mom told me to wrap the leftover slices in tin foil and put them in the fridge. I switched out discs for another video game in the meantime while I waited for the pizza. And when the doorbell finally rang, I hurried downstairs with the $20 bill my parents left me. My mom told me to tip $4. The pizza place was like 3 blocks away. So honestly, it wasn't a bad tip, especially for the time. The delivery driver was some 30-some-year-old looking guy, though he looked a little rough, like he had a really long and gross beard. He also wore glasses and was wearing a black trucker's hat. I gave him the 20 and asked for the specific change. As he handed me the box and counted the change, he looked up at me and then looked past me into the house and said, "You alone here?" I knew it was an odd, creepy question, and my parents taught me well about being wary of strangers. I said my parents are on their way home. A stupid answer in retrospect. I could have just said no, but I knew he was asking because, first of all, there were no cars in the driveway, and the fact that a kid was accepting the pizza at the door instead of an adult's. After he handed me the change, I closed the door. I ate in the kitchen, probably had 3 slices, and then wrapped up the rest of them and put them in the fridge. I went back upstairs and played my other James Bond PS2 game, Agent Under Fire. I liked this one less than Nightfire, but it was still good. Hours go by of me playing. It was probably 11:00 when the doorbell rang. Naturally, thinking it was my parents, I rushed downstairs to the door. I said through the door, "Mom, Dad." But an unfamiliar voice on the other side said, "Hey, I need help." They said they need to use a phone. I said, "Who is this?" And he repeated that he just needs to use a phone. I didn't want to peek through the window because, quite honestly, I was scared. I decided to go upstairs and ignore it. I knew from common sense alone that opening that door would be a horrible, horrible idea. I was walking up the stairs, which are directly in front of the front door, when the man outside banged on the door and I heard him say,
"Wait, please, I need help."
What that meant was that he saw me. He was watching through the glass at the top of the door. I turned around, and though it was dark on the front porch, I could still see the outline of the man's head. Though I couldn't see his eyes, it was obvious that he was staring back at me. I ran upstairs and ran to my parents' room. The only house phone that was upstairs was in my parents' room. So I went to the phone immediately and called my mom's cell phone number. I didn't memorize my dad's number at that age. My mom picked up the phone, likely under the influence of a few glasses of wine, and then I told her that there's someone at the door asking to come in. This comment likely sobered her up instantly, as I remember her tone shifted dramatically, and she sounded much louder and more concerned. She asked me a few questions. Firstly, if I had answered the man or at all made him aware that I was home, and I told the truth and said yes. I asked who it was. My mom's tone grew more and more concerned. She asked me if for any reason someone knew I was there by myself, and I immediately thought of the pizza guy. I told her that the pizza guy asked if I were here alone, and around this time the doorbell rang 2 more times. I told my mom in a panic, expressing that the guy would not leave. My mom told me to stay put in their room and keep the bedroom door locked. She said they were calling the police. My mom kept me on the line with her on her phone while they called the police using my dad's phone. They had to leave the restaurant they were in to go outside to better be able to communicate. It was a summer night. The windows were all cracked open to let some air into the house, and through my parents' window, I heard the gate on one side of the house leading to the backyard opening. It opened in a very discreet, gentle-sounding way. I told this to my mom, and she kept telling me to just stay quiet, stay in their room, and keep the lights off. I said quietly into the phone, "What if he tries getting in through the den window?" My mom would tell me to just stop talking and wait for the police. I was starting to calm down just a bit when I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps downstairs, footsteps of someone inside the house wandering around. I whispered this in a panic to my mom, and I heard her scream something into the other phone to the police. Probably something along the lines of, "The man is inside the house. Hurry up." My mom told me to hide under the bed and wait there. For my 12-year-old self, it was the most horrific, unreal moment of my life. The only thing keeping me feeling relatively protected was the tiny little lock on my parents' bedroom door. I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. The stairs are by my sister and I's bedroom down the hall. My parents' bedroom is further down. The footsteps faded for a few moments. I'm assuming as the intruder went into our bedrooms, searching. My mom told me the police would force their way in and to not move until they were inside. I heard the footsteps in the hallway coming down this way until they got to the bedroom door, and then they tried pressing down the door knob only to find it locked. They tried a few times as if that would somehow magically unlock the door. Then there was a light knocking on the door. But the person on the other side didn't speak a word. They tried the doorknob one more time before I heard the footsteps walk back down the hallway, then down the stairs, and they faded away deeper into the house. I did my best not to burst out into tears the entire time. I didn't even whisper anything into the phone because I was too scared to make the slightest sound. My mom finally told me the police were there, but to still stay put. I was expecting to hear them kick down the door, but instead I just rather suddenly heard multiple heavy footsteps and a man shouting my name, identifying himself as a police officer. I heard them coming up the stairs, and my mom gave me permission to answer them and unlock the door. There were 2 officers upstairs when I opened the door, and then 2 more downstairs. They didn't have to kick down the front door because the back door was left completely ajar. The back sliding window was also slid completely open, which was the obvious original entry point. I had to talk with the police and tell them everything that happened, including my suspicion of the pizza guy, with my parents listening in on the phone. They were en route home, and by the time they got back, there were only 2 police officers still at the house. With the police report including a note of the pizza guy, they said they'd do their investigation. My parents brought me to Johnny's Pizzeria the next night and asked me to point the guy out if I saw him. When I didn't see him, they asked the manager which employee matched the description of the delivery guy I described. He said that would be Phil, who was currently out doing a delivery. After explaining the whole scenario, he said there's no way that would be Phil and asked us to leave the premises. Long story short, my parents made a big scene in the pizzeria, and they said they would never give them our business again. We went to the car and waited in the parking lot. We waited for almost an hour, and when he never showed up, we left. My parents thought it was because the manager called or texted the employee, which caused him not to show back up, but who knows? My parents contacted a few lawyers who ultimately didn't take the case due to a lack of solid evidence, Statting it would be a waste of time, basically. Ultimately, we never did go back to that pizzeria, and it wasn't for a long while after that that my parents felt safe leaving me home alone again simply because of this incident. Ultimately, I do think it was the pizza guy, or at least someone associated with him, because who else would have known that I was home alone that night?